Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni was born on March 6, 1475, in Caprese, a small village near Arezzo, Italy. His father, Lodovico, was a modest government official, and his mother, Francesca, came from a noble yet struggling family. Only a few weeks after his birth, the family returned to Florence, the beating heart of the Renaissance. When Michelangelo was 6, his mother passed away, leaving a permanent void in his heart. He was sent to live with a stonecutter's family in Settignano, where his earliest memories were of marble dust and chisels, symbols that would later define his life. Florence, in the late 15th century, was a world of art, architecture, and philosophy. Great masters like Botticelli, Ghirlandaio, and Leonardo da Vinci filled the city with creativity. Young Michelangelo felt drawn not to books or numbers, but to sketching and observing the human form. His father, disapproving of art as a low profession, tried to push him toward a safer career, but Michelangelo's destiny had already been set. He once said, "If people knew how hard I worked to gain my mastery, it wouldn't seem so wonderful at all." From the start, he showed not just talent, but divine determination, the mark of a true genius born to change the world of art forever. At age 13, Michelangelo joined the workshop of Domenico Ghirlandaio, one of Florence's most respected fresco painters. There, he learned the technical skills of mixing colors, preparing plaster, and drawing with perspective. Within a year, his talent outshone even older apprentices. Ghirlandaio, astonished, recommended him to the patron of Florence, Lorenzo da Medici, known as Lorenzo the Magnificent. Under Lorenzo's patronage, Michelangelo studied at the Medici Garden School, a training ground for young artists surrounded by ancient Roman sculptures. There he met scholars, poets, and philosophers, absorbing the ideas of humanism, the belief that man was the center of creation. He studied anatomy by dissecting corpses, an act frowned upon by the church, but one that helped him understand the perfection of the human body. During this period, he created 2 early sculptures, Madonna of the Stairs and Battle of the Centaurs. Both works already revealed his understanding of movement, grace, and emotion. Lorenzo treated Michelangelo like a son, providing him not only shelter but exposure to Florence's greatest minds. But when Lorenzo died in 1492, Michelangelo lost his mentor and protection. Florence soon fell into political unrest under the preacher Savonarola, and the young artist decided to leave. His journey beyond Florence had begun, one that would lead him to immortality. In 1496, at age 21, Michelangelo traveled to Rome, the Eternal City. There he sought new opportunities among powerful patrons. His first major commission came from Cardinal Raphael Riario, who asked him to sculpt Bacchus, the Roman god of wine. The statue, lifelike and sensual, shocked some, but displayed Michelangelo's genius in capturing the human form. Soon after, a French cardinal named Jean-Bilhiers de la Graules commissioned him to sculpt the Pietà, the Virgin Mary cradling the dead body of Christ. This was to be placed in St. Peter's Basilica. Michelangelo accepted, determined to create something the world had never seen. Over the next 2 years, he worked tirelessly, sculpting marble so delicately that it seemed to breathe. When the Pietà was unveiled in 1499, it astonished everyone. The folds of Mary's robe, her youthful face filled with sorrow, and the lifeless beauty of Christ's body became symbols of divine grace. The statue was so perfect that people refused to believe Michelangelo had made it. In response, he secretly carved his name across Mary's sash, the only work he ever signed. At just 24, he had created one of the greatest masterpieces in history. Rome now recognized him not as a mere artist, but as a legend in the making. Michelangelo returned to Florence in 1501 to find the city ready for a symbol of its strength and freedom. The cathedral authorities commissioned him to carve a massive statue of David from a giant, flawed block of marble that had been abandoned for 40 years. Where others saw imperfection, Michelangelo saw possibility. For more than 2 years, he worked in secrecy, chiseling the marble day and night. When David was finally unveiled in 1504, the city gasped in awe. Standing over 17 feet tall, the statue represented not just the biblical hero, but the spirit of Florence itself. Intelligent, confident, and defiant. Every muscle, every vein was carved with such realism that it seemed the statue might move at any moment. The David was placed before the Palazzo Vecchio, symbolizing the defense of civic liberty. It became an instant icon of Renaissance art. Leonardo da Vinci himself admired it, even if quiet rivalry brewed between the two geniuses. Michelangelo's reputation soared beyond Florence. He had turned an imperfect stone into eternal perfection. In 1505, Michelangelo received a grand commission from Pope Julius II to design his magnificent tomb. The plan included more than 40 statues, a monumental project that would occupy him for decades. Michelangelo's imagination soared, but politics and papal priorities soon interfered. The Pope diverted funds toward rebuilding St. Peter's Basilica, leaving the artist frustrated. Feeling humiliated, Michelangelo fled to Florence. The furious Pope demanded his return, and after tense negotiations, Michelangelo reluctantly obeyed. To make peace, Julius assigned him a new and unexpected project, painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo protested, insisting he was a sculptor, not a painter, but the Pope refused to listen. What began as a burden would soon become the defining masterpiece of his career. With little experience in fresco painting, Michelangelo built his own scaffolding and began what would become one of the most breathtaking creations in human history. For 4 grueling years, Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel ceiling, a vast 12,000 square foot canvas of biblical scenes. Lying on his back, with paint dripping into his eyes, he endured loneliness, exhaustion, and immense physical pain. Yet, out of that suffering emerged divine beauty. The ceiling depicted the book of Genesis, from God separating light from darkness to the creation of Adam, Eve, and the fall of man. Over 300 figures filled the ceiling, each muscular and full of emotion. The central image, the creation of Adam, where God's and Adam's fingers nearly touch, became one of the most famous paintings in history. When the ceiling was unveiled in 1512, it left spectators speechless. Pope Julius II reportedly fell to his knees in awe. Michelangelo had painted not only the story of creation, but the spiritual story of mankind itself. Though he was exhausted and ill, the triumph transformed him forever. From that moment, he was not just an artist. He was a divine vessel of creation. After completing the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo was both celebrated and tormented. Fame brought him wealth, but also endless demands from popes and princes. His perfectionism became a curse. He destroyed many sketches, believing they were unworthy. He resumed work on the tomb of Julius II, sculpting the magnificent Moses, one of his most powerful figures. The statue's intense expression and lifelike muscles seemed to hold divine anger within. Legend says Michelangelo struck its knee with a hammer, shouting, "Now speak," as if demanding life from marble. Despite these triumphs, Michelangelo was often lonely and misunderstood. His fiery temper and stubborn pride made him difficult to work with. Rivalries with artists like Raphael added to his inner turmoil. Yet, his belief in divine purpose kept him moving forward. For Michelangelo, art was not a profession, it was a sacred duty. In the 1520s, Florence once again called for Michelangelo's genius. Pope Clement VII, a Medici, commissioned him to design the Medici Chapel in the Church of San Lorenzo. There, Michelangelo sculpted allegorical figures, day, night, dawn, and dusk, each representing the eternal cycle of life and time. Around the same time, he carved the famous slaves, also known as the prisoners, figures seemingly trapped within the marble, struggling to break free. Many historians believe they symbolize the human soul trying to escape the body's limits, or perhaps Michelangelo's own creative struggle. Florence was later besieged, and Michelangelo joined the defense, designing fortifications for the city. When the Medici regained control, he was briefly exiled but later forgiven. The chapel remained unfinished, yet it remains one of his most spiritual works, where marble feels alive, caught between dream and eternity. In 1534, Michelangelo returned to Rome, where Pope Paul III commissioned him to paint the Last Judgment on the altar wall of the Sistine Chapel. For 5 years, he worked on this massive fresco, depicting the second coming of Christ and the fate of souls. Unlike the harmonious ceiling, this painting was darker and more emotional. Figures twisted in agony and ecstasy as Christ judged the living and the dead. The work was controversial. Many criticized the nudity of the figures, calling it indecent. But the Pope defended him, saying, "Let him be, for this is divine work." Michelangelo portrayed himself as the flayed skin held by Street Bartholomew, a powerful confession of his spiritual torment. The Last Judgment revealed his deep fear of sin and his longing for redemption. It was not only a painting, it was his soul laid bare on a wall. In 1546, at the age of 71, Michelangelo was appointed chief architect of St. Peter's Basilica. He redesigned the structure, combining strength and grace into one harmonious design. His most enduring contribution was the Great Dome, which would later inspire countless architects, including Brunelleschi and even those who built the U.S. Capitol Dome. Michelangelo worked without pay, considering it a service to God. His architectural vision was both spiritual and monumental, a fusion of divine geometry and human faith. Though he did not live to see the dome completed, his design guided its final form. Under his direction, St. Peter's became not just a church, but a symbol of eternal devotion. It was Michelangelo's final great offering to the world, architecture as prayer. Beyond painting and sculpture, Michelangelo was also a poet and thinker. He wrote over 300 poems and sonnets that explored themes of love, faith, beauty, and mortality. His words reflected his struggle between earthly passion and divine love. His friendship with Vittoria Colonna, a noblewoman and poet, deeply influenced his spiritual life. Their correspondence reveals a relationship of profound emotional and intellectual intimacy. To her, he wrote, "The true work of art is but a shadow of the divine perfection." Despite fame, Michelangelo lived simply, often sleeping in his clothes, eating little, and devoting all his energy to work. He believed art was a divine calling, not a means to pleasure. His poetry offers a rare glimpse into his inner world, the soul of a man who sculpted angels but wrestled with his own humanity. In his later years, Michelangelo became more spiritual, more introspective. He continued working even into his 80s, sculpting the Pietà Rondinini, a hauntingly simple depiction of Mary holding Christ. Unlike his earlier Pietà, this one was unfinished, raw, and deeply emotional. It symbolized his growing awareness of death and his surrender to divine will. He grew frail, but refused to stop creating. Friends often found him carving by candlelight, saying, "Still, I am learning." Michelangelo had outlived most of his contemporaries, including Leonardo and Raphael. He watched the world change, yet he remained timeless. In 1564, Michelangelo fell ill while working on St. Peter's. His last letters were humble, filled with faith and gratitude. On February 18, 1564, he passed away at the age of 88 in Rome. His body was secretly taken to Florence, as per his wish, and buried in the Basilica of Santa Croce, where a monument designed by Giorgio Vasari honors him. All of Florence mourned. The man who had carved beauty from stone and painted heaven on ceilings was gone. Yet his spirit lived on in every chisel mark, every brushstroke, a testament to the divine spark within humanity. Michelangelo's influence reshaped the course of Western art. His mastery of anatomy, emotion, and divine beauty defined the High Renaissance and inspired generations of artists, from Bernini to Caravaggio. His works, David, Pieta, Moses, the creation of Adam, and the Last Judgment, became eternal benchmarks of artistic excellence. He proved that art could transcend the material world and touch the divine. Even centuries later, his genius continues to inspire painters, sculptors, and dreamers alike. Michelangelo Buonarroti was not just an artist. He was a bridge between earth and heaven. His chisel and brush revealed what words could not, the beauty of the human soul. Through marble and paint, he sought the face of God and found it within humanity itself. He once said, "Every block of stone has a statue inside it, and it is the task of the sculptor to discover it." This philosophy defined his life, to uncover the divine hidden within the human form. His legacy stands as a reminder that true genius is born from struggle, faith, and an unending pursuit of perfection.